Welcome. This video, the second in what we hope will be a three-part series, will be a quick introduction to groups for new users of OMERO at the University of Arizona. Before we get started, this slide is another reminder that OMERO is only intended for the storage and management of de-identified data. We do have some groups working with patient-related research who use a unique identifier that comes from REDCap or open specimen software for this type of data. And that unique identifier cannot be directly traceable to individual patient data. So it's not impossible to work with patient-related data, but you do need to be careful because protected health information of any kind can't be stored in OMERO. That includes information that's embedded in the bitmapped or image format in the actual pixels itself, either from medical imaging data or slide label images or things like that, acquired with the image in the form of metadata, or added later by the user in the form of tags, key value pairs, or other annotations. Many of the following slides include materials that come from the German bioimaging group i3D Bio. And this group has generously made their training presentations available to the research community. In some cases, their slides have been lightly modified to serve our specific configurations, policies, and other needs. And if you see slides with the Creative Commons logo down in the lower left corner, those came from this group. And here's the appropriate acknowledgement. So what are groups and permissions? Well, if we think about where we work, in research buildings with a moderate level of security, there are rooms and even floors that may have limited access. Faculty and staff can access their labs and the labs of collaborators, but they can't go into every space in the building. They may have different permissions on what they can do in each room. Grad students would have a more restrictive role as to what their access is, and they may have different permissions. And undergraduates, we would probably assume, would have even more limited permissions. So this is, in a broad sense, an example of groups and permissions. There are labs and then people within the lab that have a whole different permission levels. And if you've worked with cloud-based services like Box or Dropbox or Microsoft SharePoint, the owner of the space or the folder determines who can see the folder and what they can do, whether they can just view the contents, they can edit it, they can move it, they can delete it. And OMERO has similar sort of permissions. If you look over here in OMERO Web, you can see in this drop-down list that you can be a member of multiple groups. You may be the owner of one group and just a member of the other, and you can view the projects, data sets, and data in one group at a time. Coming back to this slide, you'll see this drop-down list, which we'll refer to, and the number of groups that the particular user that's logged on belongs to. And you can see all the members of the group and then look at the data or just the data of specific members of the group. You can only view the project's data sets and data in one group at a time. And an OMERO administrator will initially set up your group. If you look at these slides down at the bottom, there will be links to resource documents from the Open Microscopy group, and those links will also be in the notes that are below the video. Within OMERO groups and users, there's a couple of key points. Uploaded data belongs to the user that uploaded it, and the data resides in a very specific group. There are two major roles within a group. Each group has an owner. There can be more than one, but be very careful because this role has tremendous power. Group owners have the ability to change the permission level of their group, but there are also some important cautions that I'll talk about in a moment. And the second group role would be group members. There's also potentially a third role in that OMERO administrators have access to all the groups. And group owners, as I mentioned, can change the permission level. And the group permission levels are private, read-only, read-annotate, and read-write. And let's look at what that involves. Private group members can only see their own data. The group owner can see all the data within the group, but each individual member can only see their own data, and we'll illustrate this a little bit more in a moment. It's good for data storage, but it really limits collaboration between group members. Read-only members can see everyone's data, but they can't annotate, edit, or delete others' data. and the owner has more rights. Read annotate, members can view and annotate each other's data, but they can't edit or delete something that they don't own, and the owner has extended rights. This happens to be the default permission level that we give out as we establish new groups. There's also read write, where members can view, annotate, edit, or delete anyone's data. Now, this is used as if all the members co-own all the data, and that's a strong level of collaboration with also a very high level of trust. And that can only be granted by an administrator. So let's take a little bit deeper look at these permission levels. So let's start with private. And here's how this walks out. We have Professor Julie, who's the owner, and we have 3 lab members. Professor Julie can see all the data in the group, but the individual lab members can only see this file that they've individually uploaded, and they can't see one another's files. The members can annotate their own data, but actually Professor Julie can't. And Professor Julie, while she can delete any data within the group, only the individual members who uploaded specific data can delete their specific data. They can't delete anyone else's. So this is pretty restrictive. In read-only, everyone can see all the data, but they can only annotate the data that they've uploaded. Professor Julie can now annotate any of the data, and Professor Julie can edit or delete data, and the individual users can edit or delete the data that they have uploaded. So this is our default permission level, unless we're told otherwise. Everyone can see all the data. Everyone can annotate all the data. But again, only Professor Julie or the person who uploaded the data can delete the data. And within read-write, which again is the most permissive of them, everyone can do everything. There are some important things to be aware of regarding group permissions and their roles in data handling. You can move projects or data sets to another group, but it's critical to check to see if the other group has the same permission levels or if they're more restrictive than the source group. In that case, if there's a difference in their permission levels, it's very likely that all user-based annotations, that includes tags, key value pairs, other textual annotations, will be lost without warning. We strongly encourage you to review the OMERO guides and test the procedure with dummy folders or unimportant test folders before moving to critical data, because you don't want to lose that information. And changing the permission level of a group to a more restrictive level after there's data already in there could lead to the loss of all user-based annotations except those of the data owner. It's really best to consider your options and set the permission level of a group before data is uploaded. So let's think about your group. In your group, we most likely have a faculty member with group owner rights. We have group members that the group's owner has selected to add to the group, and each group has a name. And hopefully it's a name that makes it clear both to the group members and to the administrators exactly what the purpose of the group is. The reason for that is so that as people may belong to multiple groups and we want them to be able to know when they're uploading data that it's going to the correct place. In general, the default permission will be read annotate, but that can be changed at the group owner's discretion. And again, you want to make this decision before data has been uploaded. It's possible that labs will have a legitimate need to have more than one OMERO group. Could be that you want to keep data from 2 different grants separated, or maybe a grad student working on their dissertation would like to keep their data just between themselves and the faculty member. So reach out to us and we can discuss your needs and try and strategize the best approach for OMERO. As I've already alluded to, it's easy to add or remove members from a group as needed, while there are a lot more potential problems with trying to move data between groups. In our U of A configuration of OMERO, we've created what we're calling the common group. It's not intended for data. It's because every user in OMERO has to belong to a group. And this way, if the user starts out, it's just a waiting area. So if you're looking for users to add to your group, they're always going to be at least part of one group, which is the common one, and you can add them or remove them as needed. So either the administrator or the owner of a specific group will add you to that group as the owner wants you to participate in. Group members will want to make sure that they are correctly pointing to the group that they want the data to go to when they're uploading an OMERO, because as we've mentioned, moving data between groups needs to be done carefully. Better off deleting it and uploading it correctly to the one that you want. You will likely want to change your user settings so that your preferred default group, the one that shows up when you first log into OMERO, and I believe we showed that to you in the last time. One of the issues with uploading data is it might be you have two groups because your lab is looking at lung and liver, and you don't want to put liver images in the lung folder, in the lung project, and so on. To give you an example of the user settings, if I go up to my login here and I go to user settings, I can change my default group right here. So you can see I want the test group to be my default group. I say save, and then if I go back to data, it takes me to that test group automatically. Make sure that you click save to get the correct group selected. As you work in OMERO, it's good to remember that data is owned by the person who uploads it. If the data is uploaded by an undergraduate student, it becomes the student's data, and they also have the permission to delete that data. In almost every one of the four group types, the group owner or owners can also delete data. If there's a situation where someone is a regular user of a core facility and you'd like the core staff to upload your data on a regular basis, but you'd like them to do it in the name of the person who actually captured the images, this can be done. We can give the core facility staff or perhaps a lab manager within your lab a low-level administrative permission, and they do need to be a group member, that allows them to upload the data on someone else's behalf. If for some reason the process isn't completely automatic, like with a Python script, then it's possible that the lab will need to pay for core staff time. But there are ways to set up folders that do this fairly automatically. Data ownership can be transferred to a different group member, say after someone leaves, but it's not simple. Doing this requires administrative permissions and a Python script. Sometimes people leave the lab. And if they've left the university, then they're no longer able to access OMERO because their UA net ID will be inactivated. This means that the group member won't be able to use the VPN. If you want to continue collaborating with that group member, then the owner should submit a request for a designated campus colleague to the HR person of your department. Typically takes about 2 weeks. Since all OMERO users have to be part of at least one group, we created a common group so that for some reason the group owner feels that they need to quickly remove someone from their group, they can do that immediately because everyone still belongs to at least one other group. For example, if you decide that you no longer trust a particular group member and you want them out of your group quickly, you won't run into issues with OMERO saying, well, you can't delete this person because they have to belong to at least one group. If you remove someone from your group, that former group member will no longer have access to any of the data in your group, even if they're technically the owner of some of that data. As was mentioned before, data ownership can be transferred. It's just not very straightforward. In the third video of this series, we'll be talking about data management. And one of the goals of having OMERO at the University of Arizona was that we would be able to take advantage of the FAIR principles, where data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. We want labs to have a data management plan so that they go through the entire cycle of capturing data, processing it, preserving it, and sharing it. Often, you or the other members of your specific lab are the most likely persons to reuse your lab's data. You want to manage the data in such a way that future you is not frustrated with past you for not leaving enough information to know whether this is useful data or not. Couple of other things. A reminder that group owners can change the permission level. And again, we recommend doing this before data has been uploaded, because changing the permissions level after the fact is more likely to cause loss of tags, key value pairs, and other annotations. You can add and remove users as needed, and you can also check on the amount of disk space your group is using. So in this case, I am logged into OMERO as a group owner, and I go up to user settings. And we've gone over this before, but if I go to my groups, you can see that I own this group. I can edit this, and I can decide that I want to add or remove a user from the list of users. I can also look at the statistics for my test group, and I can see that I have uploaded the bulk of this data. So this gives me an idea of how much space I'm using. So a little under 200 gigabytes. Thank you for listening. If you are an interested University of Arizona user and you have questions about OMERO, please feel free to reach out to the rii-omero@arizona.edu email address or call myself, Doug Cromie, on the phone number on the screen. There'll be notes below the video that go along with this and include many of the links that you saw on the slides, and we encourage you to visit those resources as you need. Thank you.